My name is Griffin Parker, 67 years old and still kicking. When my son Michael died unexpectedly last year, my world shattered. For 3 years, I had been living peacefully in the guest house on his property, enjoying my retirement and our close bond. His wife Jessica and I got along fine, or so I thought. Then came that awful day when we buried my boy. Something changed in her eyes when they lowered his casket. 2 weeks later, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her words cut deeper than any construction accident I ever suffered. "You have 1 week to move out. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below, hit that subscribe button, and stick around to see how this grieving father turned the tables on a gold digger who picked the wrong family to mess with." Amanda, my beloved wife, passed away 8 years ago after a brutal battle with pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 18. Michael was our only child, and after his mother died, our bond grew even stronger. We spoke nearly every day, even if just for 5 minutes between his job sites. He was the kind of son fathers dream of having. I spent 42 years in construction, working my way up from swinging hammers to managing major commercial projects across 3 states. Michael literally grew up on job sites, wearing a tiny hard hat I bought him for his 5th birthday. I still keep that small yellow helmet on my bookshelf. When he turned 18, Michael announced he wanted to follow my footsteps. I tried talking him into college first, but that boy had sawdust in his veins, just like his old man. He started as an apprentice carpenter under my crew foreman, Frank. No special treatment. He carried lumber, swept floors, and earned every callus. The other guys tested him hard, knowing he was the boss man's son. 6 months in, Frank pulled me aside after work. I figured Michael had screwed up or wanted to quit. Instead, Frank said, "Your kid has the touch, Griff. Best natural I ever trained. Got your eye for detail, too." Michael worked his way up faster than I ever did. By 25, he was running his own crews. By 30, he started Parker & Sons Construction. He always kept that and Sons part, even though it was just him, saying one day it would be true. Now that dream is gone with him. What made me proudest was how he treated his people. Fair pay, safety first, and he never asked anyone to do what he would not do himself. When torrential rain flooded a foundation they were pouring, Michael worked 36 hours straight alongside his crew to save the job. Our best times were our fishing trips to Lake Wallowa, just the 2 of us in my old aluminum boat, talking about everything and nothing. On his 30th birthday, I gave him my father's pocket watch, the only thing of value my dad ever owned. Michael carried it on his wedding day. Jessica entered the picture 7 years ago. Michael met her at a charity event his company sponsored. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, beautiful and sharp as a tack. I remember him calling me that night, sounding like a teenager. "Dad, I just met someone special," he said. I had my reservations about Jessica from the start. Nothing concrete, just instinct from a lifetime of sizing people up. She came from money and had expensive tastes. Her laugh never quite reached her eyes when Michael told his corny jokes, but he was smitten, and I kept my concerns to myself. My boy was 41, old enough to make his own choices. Their wedding 5 years ago was extravagant, held at a winery overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. 200 guests, many I suspected Jessica invited to impress. Amanda would have hated the ostentation. Michael looked uncomfortable in his $1,000 tuxedo, but happier than I had ever seen him. 3 years ago, they purchased a beautiful 5-acre property outside Portland. The main house was nearly 4,000 square feet, with a separate guest house about a quarter that size. The guest house had previously been a caretaker cottage, but had been nicely renovated. When Michael showed me the property, he insisted I come live with them. I tried to refuse. At 64, I still valued my independence. I had my condo downtown, close to everything, but Michael was persuasive. "Dad, that commute is killing you. The guest house is just sitting there. You can have your privacy, but be close enough that we can have coffee in the mornings before work." The truth was, I was getting tired of my empty condo. Too many memories of Amanda in those walls. So I agreed, rented out my place, and moved into the guest house. Those first few months were some of the best times. Michael and I would have coffee on the deck each morning, watching the sunrise before he headed to job sites. Jessica was cordial but distant. She worked long hours and traveled frequently for her job. When she was home, she often had friends over, the kind who drove luxury cars and talked about vacation homes. I made myself scarce during these gatherings. About a year after I moved in, Michael confided in me while we were fixing a leaky faucet in the main house. Jessica had maxed out 2 credit cards, $20,000 on one, $15,000 on another, designer clothes, spa weekends with her friends, and home decor they did not need. "She thinks appearances matter more than security, Dad," he said, frustration evident in his voice. I try to explain that construction can be feast or famine. We need reserves. I bit my tongue, avoiding the "I told you so" that threatened to escape. Instead, I suggested marriage counseling, maybe financial planning together. Michael nodded, said he would bring it up. Looking back, I wonder if he ever did, or if that conversation might have saved him from what was coming. By the time winter rolled around that year, I noticed tension between them. Jessica spent more time away, and Michael worked longer hours. I invited him to the guest house for beers more often, sensing he needed the refuge. We never spoke directly about his marriage problems. I just made sure he knew his old man was there for him, whatever storm he was weathering. The last time we went fishing together, 3 months before the accident, Michael seemed distracted. We sat in silence for an hour before he finally spoke. "Dad, do you ever wonder if you made the right choices in life?" We talked until sunset, about regrets, second chances, and knowing when to hold on versus let go. I thought we were talking about his company growing too fast. Now I wonder if he was contemplating the end of his marriage. That night, he hugged me longer than usual when we got back to the house. If only I had known it would be our last fishing trip together. I remember every excruciating detail of October 15th. The sky was that perfect clear blue you get in Oregon autumn. I was replacing some weather stripping on my door when my phone rang. The display showed Frank, now Michael's site foreman. "Griffin, you need to get to Good Samaritan Hospital now. There was an accident." Michael fell when a scaffold collapsed. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice getting to my truck. The 20-minute drive to Portland took me 15, running a red light I do not even remember. My mind raced with prayers and bargains to whatever higher power might be listening. "Take me instead. Please. Not my boy." The emergency room was chaos, but Frank stood waiting, his weathered face gray with shock. His right hand was bandaged, and his clothes were spattered with what I realized with horror was blood. Michael's blood. "What happened?" I managed to ask. They were inspecting a 3-story office renovation. The scaffold had been set up by a new subcontractor. Michael was concerned about the bracing, went up himself to check. Frank swallowed hard. It collapsed without warning. He fell 30 feet onto concrete. A doctor emerged from the trauma area, still in surgical scrubs. "Are you Michael Parker's family?" "I am his father," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The doctor's expression told me everything before he spoke. "Mr. Parker, I am so sorry. Your son suffered massive internal injuries and head trauma. We did everything possible, but we could not save him. He passed away 10 minutes ago." The world tilted beneath my feet. Frank caught my arm as my knees buckled. The doctor continued speaking. Something about Michael never regaining consciousness, about him not suffering, about how quickly it happened. The words washed over me without meaning. They let me see him. My beautiful boy, still warm to the touch but utterly still. His hands, so much like mine but younger, stronger, now lifeless on the white sheet. I spoke to him, told him his mother would be waiting for him, told him how proud I was, how much I loved him. The words came between sobs that tore from somewhere deep inside me. I do not know how long I sat with him before the hospital staff gently suggested I make calls. Jessica. I had to tell Jessica. She did not answer her cell. I called her office. They said she was in a meeting. I finally reached her on the 3rd try. "What is it, Griffin?" "I am busy," she answered, irritation clear in her voice. "Jessica, there has been an accident." "Michael." I could not finish the sentence. "What kind of accident? Is he okay?" "No. He is gone, Jessica. Michael is dead." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard a sharp intake of breath. That is not possible. We have dinner reservations tonight. Of all the things she could have said, that response haunts me. Not grief or disbelief, but inconvenience. The dinner reservations they would now miss. She arrived at the hospital 40 minutes later, immaculately dressed in a business suit, not a hair out of place. When she saw me in the waiting area, her first words were, "How did this happen? Was it negligence? Can we sue?" I explained about the scaffold as she nodded, her mind seemingly already calculating angles I could not fathom through my grief. When we went to see Michael's body, she stood at the doorway, not approaching the bed. She did not touch him, did not say goodbye. She pulled out her phone and made a call, stepping into the hallway. I heard her say something about contacting their insurance agent. The next few days passed in a blur of arrangements. Jessica insisted on the most expensive funeral home in Portland, rejecting my suggestion of the family-owned place that had handled Amanda's service with such compassion. "We need something befitting Michael's standing in the business community," she said. "This other place is too simple." Simple was Michael's way, I argued. He would hate all this fuss. He is not here to have an opinion, she snapped. This is about honoring his legacy appropriately. The funeral became a production that felt nothing like my son. Jessica selected an imported mahogany casket with gold fixtures that cost more than my first house. She vetoed the construction boots and flannel shirt I brought for him to be buried in, insisting instead on a designer suit he had worn only once and hated. The day of the funeral dawned cold and rainy. Over 300 people packed the church. Michael's entire crew came in clean work clothes, their rough hands clutching program leaflets. Business associates in expensive suits clustered together, speaking in hushed tones about projects and contracts. Jessica sat beside me in the front pew, a vision in tailored black, her makeup perfect despite the occasional tissue she dabbed at dry eyes. When it came time for the eulogy, she nudged me. "You are up." I had written nothing, trusting my heart to find the words. I spoke about Michael as a boy who loved building forts from scrap lumber, about the time he fell off our roof, helping me with shingles at age 16, and got right back up, about his integrity, his kindness, his loyalty, about how he made everyone around him want to be better. By the time I finished, there was not a dry eye in the church, except for Jessica's. She did not speak at the service. Instead, she had arranged for the head of the Chamber of Commerce to talk about Michael's contributions to the business community. The man had met my son perhaps 3 times. At the reception afterward, I noticed Jessica speaking intently with a man in an expensive suit. When I approached, she smoothly introduced him as Alan Daniels, their estate attorney. I had never heard his name before. "Just taking care of some formalities, Griffin," she said, steering me away. "Why do not you get something to eat?" Throughout the reception, Michael's friends approached me, sharing stories in genuine grief. Many whispered condolences that contained hints. "Michael spoke about you all the time. He was worried about some things before he died. He wanted you to know he had a plan." These cryptic messages confused me at the time, but would later make terrible sense. Frank pulled me aside as the crowd thinned. "Griffin, there is something you should know. Michael came to me about 2 months ago, asking about transferring some assets. Said he wanted to make sure certain things were protected. I thought he meant from business liability. Now I wonder." Before he could elaborate, Jessica appeared at my elbow. "Frank, thank you for coming. Griffin needs to rest now." As people filed out, offering final condolences, I watched Jessica checking her watch repeatedly. The moment the last guest left, she disappeared into the study with her phone. Through the door, I heard her discussing property values with someone. My son was not even in the ground, and she was already moving on. 2 weeks after we buried Michael, the atmosphere in the house changed dramatically. Jessica began treating me like an unwelcome guest rather than family. Conversations that once happened over kitchen counters moved to brief, cold exchanges in doorways. I first noticed something was wrong when I stopped receiving certain mail. For 40 years, I had subscribed to a construction industry magazine. It always came on the 15th. When it did not arrive, I checked with the main house, where all mail was delivered. "Have you seen my magazine?" I asked Jessica, who was sorting through a stack of envelopes. No. Maybe you should update your address with them, she replied without looking up. The next day, I found the magazine in the recycling bin, still in its plastic wrapper. When I retrieved it, Jessica watched from the kitchen window, her expression unreadable. That weekend, I overheard Jessica on the phone in the garden, unaware I was nearby pruning the hydrangeas Michael and I had planted. The attorney says we need to move carefully, she was saying. Yes, the life insurance came through already. 2 million. No, the old man does not know yet. I need to figure out the property situation first. My secateurs nearly dropped from my hand. Life insurance? Michael had never mentioned a policy that large to me. And why would Jessica keep it secret? Over the next few days, I noticed unfamiliar cars in the driveway when I returned from errands. Men in suits carrying folders. A woman with a clipboard walking the property line. When I asked Jessica about these visitors, she gave vague answers about estate matters. One morning, I saw a real estate agent's car parked out front. This time, I confronted her directly. Are you planning to sell the house? I asked. Jessica did not even attempt to deny it. I am considering my options. This place is too large for just me, and it has too many memories. What about me? I live here too. This was Michael's dream property. She looked at me as if I were a stranger who had wandered onto her porch. This is a financial decision, Griffin. Michael left considerable debts I need to address. This stopped me cold. Debts? Michael ran a successful business. He was always careful with money, unlike his wife. What debts? I asked. The business had cash flow issues. The new office complex project was underwater. She sighed dramatically. Michael was not the financial wizard you thought. He leveraged everything, and now I am left cleaning up the mess. None of this aligned with what I knew of my son or his business. Just the previous month, he had mentioned landing 2 major contracts that would keep his crews busy for 18 months. Something was very wrong with Jessica's story. That evening, I called Frank, inviting him for a beer in the guest house. Away from Jessica's ears, I asked him about the company's financial situation. Frank nearly spat out his drink. Cash flow problems? The company has over 2 million in working capital. The office project is 20% under budget and ahead of schedule. We just landed the community college contract last week. Michael ran the tightest ship in Portland construction. So why would Jessica claim otherwise? I wondered aloud. Frank looked uncomfortable. Griff, there is something you should know. Michael came to me about 4 months ago, concerned about Jessica's spending. He had discovered she had opened credit cards in the company name and racked up serious charges. He was considering divorce. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Michael had been planning to leave Jessica, and now she was manipulating the narrative after his death. I began my own discreet investigation. A friend at the bank where Michael kept his accounts hinted at large withdrawals Jessica had made since the funeral. A neighbor mentioned seeing Jessica removing boxes of Michael's belongings while I was at a doctor's appointment. The most disturbing discovery came when I checked the mailbox early one morning. I found a notice from an insurance company confirming payment of $2 million to Jessica as beneficiary. The policy had been taken out just 2 years prior, around the time they purchased the property. That same day, I found workers in the garage, boxing up Michael's tools. Tools passed down from me to him, some from my father before that. What are you doing? I demanded. The lady of the house asked us to clear everything out, said a young man in a moving company shirt. Said it is all going to auction next week. I physically stood in front of them, blocking access to Michael's workbench. These tools are family heirlooms. They are not hers to sell. The workers looked uncomfortable but continued until I called Jessica. She arrived home an hour later, clearly annoyed. Those are just taking up space, Griffin. Michael has no use for them now. They belong to the Parker family, I insisted. Some were my father's, and now they belong to Michael's widow. She replied coldly, I am having the guest house assessed next week. You should start thinking about where you will go. That evening, alone in my guest house, I pulled out photo albums, seeking comfort in memories. In one, I found pictures of Michael and me at the title company when he purchased this property. Something about the documents visible in the photos caught my eye. I used a magnifying glass to examine them closer. There, partially visible, was language about joint ownership. Had Michael put the property in both our names? I needed to find out for certain. The next day, while Jessica was at a spa appointment, I visited the county records office. A helpful clerk pulled the property file, and what I discovered changed everything. Michael had indeed purchased the property in both our names, with right of survivorship. Legally, since his death, I was now the sole owner of the entire property, main house included. Why had Michael done this without telling me? I recalled his worried expression during our last fishing trip. He had been putting safeguards in place, protecting both me and his assets from Jessica's spending habits. As I drove home, I called my old friend Daniel, who had practiced real estate law for 40 years. He confirmed what the records showed. The property was now legally mine, not Jessica's. She likely had no idea, given her behavior. I faced a crucial decision. Should I immediately assert my ownership, or observe Jessica's plans further to understand the full scope of her betrayal? When I arrived home, Jessica was hosting several friends for drinks on the patio. Through the open windows, I heard her discussing renovation plans. Once I sell this monstrosity, I am thinking Miami, one of those high-rise condos with full-service amenities, she was saying. Michael's insurance payout should cover it nicely. Plus, I will have whatever the business sells for. I heard enough. But rather than confrontation, I chose strategic patience. Daniel had advised documenting everything before making my move. The property was not going anywhere, and Jessica was digging herself a deeper hole every day. That night, Jessica invited me to dinner in the main house, something she had not done since Michael's death. She had prepared my favorite pasta dish, one Amanda used to make. The manipulation was obvious. Over dessert, she broached the subject. "Griffin, I have been thinking about your situation. This property holds so many memories, and I know you loved Michael deeply. But financially, I cannot maintain two residences." I simply nodded, waiting. "I need to sell, and that means you will need to find a new place." She reached across and patted my hand in false sympathy. "I know it is hard, but Michael would want us both to move forward." It took everything in me not to reveal what I knew. Instead, I asked, "When were you thinking?" Her smile turned predatory. "Actually, I already have interested buyers. They would like to close by the end of the month. So you have a week to make arrangements. A week to leave the home where I had planned to spend my remaining years, near the memories of my son." Jessica watched me, expecting devastation. I gave her nothing. "I see," I said simply. "I will need to make some calls." "That is it?" she asked, clearly disappointed by my calm response. "What did you expect, Jessica? Begging? Tears?" She stood abruptly. "I expected gratitude for the 3 years you lived here rent-free. Michael carried you, and now I am done with that burden." In that moment, I saw her true character fully revealed. She had never loved my son. He had been a stepping stone to the lifestyle she craved, and now his death was her lottery ticket. I left the table without another word, returning to the guest house to make my plans. The game was on, but Jessica did not realize she had already lost. The morning after Jessica dropped her bombshell about selling the house, she cornered me as I collected my newspaper from the driveway. Her hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, her casual outfit probably costing more than my entire wardrobe. "I have prepared a timeline for your departure," she said, handing me a typed document. "This outlines when I need you completely moved out, and which areas need to be cleared first for the real estate photographers." I glanced at the paper. She had generously given me 7 days to vacate the home I legally owned. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. "And if I need more time?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Jessica laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "That is not an option, Griffin. The buyers are very motivated, and frankly, your continued presence is depressing. Michael is gone. We both need fresh starts." "How much are they offering?" I inquired, genuinely curious about what she thought my home was worth. $3.2 million, she said with obvious satisfaction, significantly above market value, which is why I accepted immediately. The property Michael had purchased for $2.1 million just 3 years ago had appreciated, but not by that much. Someone was overpaying, or Jessica was lying. I see, I said. And the guest house? Included, of course. The buyers love the idea of a separate space for their parents to visit. She smiled thinly. Ironic, is not it? I folded the timeline and placed it in my pocket. Do you mind if I ask what legal right you have to sell the property? Her eyes narrowed. I am Michael's widow. Everything he owned passes to me. That is how marriage works. Is there a will? I pressed. A flash of something crossed her face. Uncertainty, perhaps. That is none of your concern. My attorney has confirmed my legal standing. I simply nodded and turned toward the guest house. Behind me, Jessica called out, "And Griffin, I expect you to leave everything in pristine condition. Any damage comes out of whatever housewarming gift I might feel generous enough to give you." Inside my small home, I called Daniel immediately, putting him on speaker as I made coffee. "She is moving fast, Daniel. Claims to have buyers ready to pay well above market." My friend chuckled on the other end of the line. "She cannot sell what she does not own, Griff. But this is interesting. She clearly does not know about the joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Has she mentioned a will? Says, it is none of my business. But I get the feeling there is not one. Michael never mentioned it to me. That tracks with what we know. If Michael died intestate, without a will, and the property was jointly owned with right of survivorship, it passed directly to you outside of probate. Jessica has no claim to it whatsoever. Then why is she so confident? I wondered aloud. Either she is bluffing, or someone has given her very bad legal advice. Daniel paused. Or there is something else going on we do not know about. Have you checked with Michael's personal attorney? I had not even known Michael had a personal attorney separate from the company lawyer. Apparently, there was much my son had kept private, even from me. After ending the call with Daniel, I phoned Thomas Walker, Michael's business attorney. His secretary was hesitant to speak with me until I identified myself as Michael's father. "Mr. Parker, Thomas has been trying to reach Mrs. Parker for weeks without success," she said. "He has important documents that need her attention regarding the business succession." I explained the situation briefly. The secretary sighed. "That explains a lot. Thomas is in court today, but I can tell you that Michael updated his business succession plan 4 months ago. He left controlling interest in the company to both you and his operations manager, Frank, not to Jessica." Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Michael had been systematically ensuring Jessica could not get her hands on his assets. But why had he not simply divorced her? My next call was to Sandra Milligan, Michael's personal banker. We had met at several company events over the years. "Griffin, I am so glad you called," she said when her assistant put me through. "I have been concerned about some of the account activity since Michael's passing." "What kind of activity?" I asked. "Large withdrawals, almost to the daily limit, from their joint accounts. Nearly $300,000 in the past 2 weeks alone." Sandra lowered her voice. "And there have been inquiries about liquidating Michael's investment portfolio. Is Jessica authorized to do that?" "On the joint accounts, yes, but not on Michael's personal accounts or investment portfolio. Those require additional documentation she has not provided." Sandra hesitated. "Griffin, I probably should not tell you this, but Michael came to see me privately about 3 months before his accident. He moved substantial assets into accounts, in his name only. The picture was becoming clearer by the hour. Michael had recognized the threat Jessica posed and had taken steps to protect his assets, but he had died before completing the process or finalizing a divorce. My final call that morning was to Frank. "Could you come by the guest house this evening? I have some important things to discuss." That afternoon, Jessica had more visitors. Through my window, I recognized Alan Daniels, the attorney from the funeral, along with a well-dressed couple who spent an hour touring the property. The prospective buyers, I presumed. When they approached the guest house, I stepped outside to meet them. "This is Griffin, Michael's father," Jessica said with a tight smile. "He will be relocating very soon, so do not worry about the guest house availability." The husband extended his hand. "James Thornton, your son built our vacation home on Mount Hood. Exceptional craftsmanship." "Thank you," I said, shaking his hand. "Michael took great pride in his work." "Such a tragedy," Mrs. Thornton added. Jessica was just telling us how difficult it has been managing the property alone. Jessica quickly steered them away, throwing a warning glance over her shoulder at me. That evening, Frank arrived with a pizza and 6-pack of beer. After ensuring we would not be overheard, I shared everything I had discovered. Frank was not surprised. Michael confided in me about his marital problems. The spending was out of control. He discovered Jessica had run up over $100,000 in credit card debt he knew nothing about. When he confronted her, she threatened to divorce him and take half of everything, including the company. Then why did not he file for divorce himself? I asked. He was gathering evidence first. Jessica had been claiming business expenses for personal items, which could be considered fraud. He wanted to make sure she could not damage the company reputation during a messy divorce. Frank reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Michael gave me this about a month before the accident. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should give it to you. Inside was a letter in Michael's handwriting. Dad, if you are reading this, something has gone wrong. I hope it is just me being paranoid, but I have learned some disturbing things about Jessica that make me question everything. I am working with my attorneys to protect what I have built and to ensure you are taken care of no matter what. The property is in both our names. I never told Jessica this because I wanted a safety net for both of us. If something happens to me, the house and land become yours entirely. There is also a separate life insurance policy naming you beneficiary that Jessica knows nothing about. Thomas Walker has the details. I am sorry for bringing this chaos into our lives. I made a mistake in my choice of partner, but I am working to correct it. Take care of yourself, and know that you have been the best father a man could ask for. Love, Michael. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling my son's presence more strongly. Even facing his own troubles, he had been thinking of me. That night, after Frank left, Jessica knocked on my door. Her smile was artificially bright, her voice saccharine. I thought we should discuss your moving arrangements, she said. I have found several nice senior living communities that might suit you. I bet you have, I thought, but said only, actually, I have made my own arrangements. Relief washed over her face. Wonderful. Where will you be going? I will let you know when the time comes, I replied, unwilling to reveal my strategy. Jessica frowned. I need your forwarding address for legal purposes, Griffin. You will have it when necessary. Is there anything else? Her pleasant facade cracked slightly. Yes, actually. I need you to sign these papers. Just a formality acknowledging you have no claim to any of Michael's property or business interests. I took the document, several pages of dense legal text. I will have my attorney review these. Her eyes widened. Your attorney? This is straightforward, Griffin. No need to waste money on legal fees. Nevertheless, I prefer professional advice. I handed the papers back unsigned. Good night, Jessica. As I closed the door, I heard her hiss, stubborn old fool. I smiled for the first time in weeks. The game was indeed on, and Jessica had no idea what cards I held. The morning after receiving Michael's letter, I met with Daniel at his downtown office. I brought all the documentation I had gathered. The property records showing joint ownership, Michael's letter, and the papers Jessica had tried to get me to sign. Daniel reviewed everything carefully, occasionally shaking his head or making notes. Finally, he looked up with a smile that reminded me why he had been such a feared litigator before semi-retirement. Griffin, she does not have a legal leg to stand on. The property is yours, free and clear. These papers, he tapped the documents Jessica had presented, would have had you sign away rights you absolutely possess. This is borderline fraud. What about Michael's business? I asked. That is more complex. But from what you have told me, Michael set up safeguards there too. We should meet with Thomas Walker to get the full picture. Daniel arranged a meeting with Thomas for that afternoon. In the meantime, he made a crucial suggestion. Let her believe she is winning. If Jessica thinks you are preparing to leave, she will get overconfident and possibly make mistakes. How good an actor are you, Griff? Good enough, I replied, understanding his strategy. When I returned to the property, I began visibly packing boxes in the guest house. Jessica noticed immediately, watching through her kitchen window as I carried empty boxes from my car. Later, she approached as I pretended to sort through books on my shelf. "I am glad to see you being sensible," she said. "The Thorntons are very eager to close quickly. I need to be out by next Tuesday, correct?" I asked, maintaining the charade. Jessica nodded, barely containing her satisfaction. "I have arranged for a cleaning service to come in after you leave. The Thorntons are bringing their designer on Wednesday to measure for renovations." "I see you have it all planned out," I remarked mildly. "Efficiency is important in business, Griffin." Michael understood that, even if his execution was sometimes lacking. The casual disparagement of my dead son stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "Where was this business acumen of yours when Michael was alive?" Her smile tightened. "I was supporting his vision. Now, I am pursuing my own." "And what vision is that? Liquidating everything he built?" Jessica's eyes flashed. "What I do with my inheritance is none of your concern. You should be grateful I am giving you time to leave with dignity." I returned to my pretend packing as she strutted away, confident in her victory. The performance continued over the next 2 days. I called a friend, Harold, who agreed to let me stay with him temporarily as part of the ruse. I began moving boxes to his house, making sure Jessica saw the process. In reality, I was consolidating Michael's most precious possessions and important documents, ensuring they were safely away from Jessica's grasp. Meanwhile, Daniel and Thomas Walker were building our legal strategy. The meeting with Thomas confirmed everything we had pieced together. Michael came to me approximately 6 months ago with concerns about Jessica's spending and possible financial impropriety, Thomas explained in his office. He suspected she was using company accounts for personal expenses and wanted to protect the business. "What did you advise?" Daniel asked. "We created a new operating agreement for Parker Construction. Michael retained 51% ownership, but created a succession plan naming Griffin and Frank as inheriting the controlling interest upon his death. Jessica was explicitly excluded. Did Michael tell her about these changes?" I asked. Thomas shook his head. He was gathering evidence for a potential divorce. He wanted everything legally in place before confronting her. After our meeting, we had a clear picture and a solid plan. The property was mine through right of survivorship. The business would be controlled by Frank and me. Jessica would get nothing except what was explicitly in joint accounts, which Michael had been systematically minimizing. The next phase required patience. I continued the moving charade while Daniel prepared the necessary legal documents. Jessica grew increasingly smug, hosting her friends for what she called a beginning of new adventures party on the deck one evening. Through the open windows, I overheard her plans. "I am thinking of keeping some of the land but demolishing both houses. The architect says we could build something much more modern and energy efficient." One friend asked, "What about Michael's father? Where is he going?" "Some retirement community in Vancouver. It is for the best, really. He was too attached to Michael, living in the past. This way he can be with other people his age." I smiled grimly at her dismissal of me. Jessica had no idea that every word strengthened our case, showing her disregard for Michael's wishes and family. 5 days after Jessica's ultimatum, I appeared at her door with Harold beside me. "Jessica, this is my friend Harold. I will be staying with him until I find something permanent." She barely concealed her triumph. "How wonderful. Do you need help with the last of your things?" "No, I can manage. I expect to be completely out by tomorrow afternoon." "Perfect." She practically glowed with victory. "The Thorntons will be so pleased." As I turned to leave, I added casually, "Oh, and Jessica, I will need to come by next week to pick up some paperwork that arrives monthly. Just tax documents. I will call first." She waved dismissively. "Just have it forwarded to Harold's. I do not want to deal with your mail." After leaving with Harold, we drove directly to Daniel's office to finalize our preparations. Thomas Walker joined us, along with Frank and a court-appointed process server. "Everything is in order," Daniel confirmed. "The property deed clearly shows Griffin as surviving owner. The business succession documents are properly filed. The only question is timing." "I want her to believe she has won completely," I said. "Let her celebrate tonight. We move tomorrow." That evening, Jessica called me, her voice syrupy sweet. "Griffin, the house looks wonderful. I wanted to thank you for leaving everything so tidy. I had done no such thing, having removed only my personal belongings and items with sentimental value. The rest remained exactly as it had been. You are welcome, Jessica. I hope you and the Thorntons will be very happy with the property. Actually, they increased their offer this afternoon. 3.5 million. Can you believe it? She was practically gloating. Congratulations, I said quietly. You must be very pleased. It is bittersweet, of course, she lied. But Michael would want us to move forward. Yes, I said. I believe he would. After ending the call, I looked at Daniel. She is expecting the Thorntons to sign papers tomorrow afternoon. We need to move in the morning. Daniel nodded. Everything is ready. 7:30 a.m. sharp. That night, I slept poorly at Harold's house, thinking of Michael, of all we had shared, and of the confrontation to come. By 6 a.m., I was awake and preparing. Daniel arrived precisely at 7, followed by Thomas, Frank, and 2 sheriff's deputies with the court orders we had obtained. It was time for Jessica to learn the truth about her situation. We arrived at the property at exactly 7:30 in the morning. Jessica's sports car sat in the driveway, along with a vehicle I recognized as belonging to Alan Daniels, her attorney. Perfect timing. They were likely reviewing the sale documents for the meeting with the Thorntons later. Daniel parked directly behind both cars, effectively blocking them in. The 2 sheriff's deputies positioned their vehicle at the end of the driveway. No one would be leaving until our business was concluded. Frank looked at me. Ready for this, Griff? I nodded, straightening my shoulders. For Michael, we approached the front door together, Daniel carrying a leather portfolio containing all our documentation. I rang the doorbell, hearing the chimes echo through the house my son had once been so proud of. Jessica opened the door wearing an expensive silk robe, coffee cup in hand. Her expression shifted from confusion to irritation when she saw me. Griffin, what are you doing here? Her eyes moved past me to the deputies. And who are they? Mrs. Parker, one deputy said, stepping forward. We have legal documents to serve you. May we come in? Jessica looked frantically over her shoulder. Alan appeared in the hallway behind her, his usual polished appearance slightly rumpled, as if they had been working through the night. What is this about? He demanded, moving to stand beside Jessica. Daniel smiled thinly. Perhaps we should discuss this inside, unless you prefer your neighbors to witness everything. Jessica reluctantly stepped back, allowing us to enter. We moved to the living room, where papers were spread across the coffee table. I recognized real estate contracts and what appeared to be bank transfer authorizations. This is highly irregular, Alan protested. Mrs. Parker has an appointment with buyers this afternoon. Those buyers will be disappointed, Daniel replied calmly, opening his portfolio. He extracted a document and handed it to Alan. This is the original deed to this property, showing it was purchased in joint tenancy with right of survivorship by Michael Parker and Griffin Parker. Upon Michael's death, ownership transferred completely to Griffin. Jessica Parker has no ownership interest whatsoever. Alan scanned the document, his face paling slightly. He looked at Jessica. Did you know about this? This is ridiculous, Jessica snapped. Michael would never do that behind my back. This must be a forgery. The second deputy stepped forward. Mrs. Parker, we also have a court order freezing all accounts associated with Parker Construction pending a full audit. We have reason to believe company funds may have been misappropriated. Jessica sank onto the sofa, her coffee cup tipping dangerously. You cannot do this. I am Michael's widow. Everything is mine, by right. Daniel continued as if she had not spoken. Additionally, we have Michael's properly executed business succession documents, naming Griffin Parker and Frank Hollister as inheriting controlling interest in Parker Construction. Again, Jessica Parker has no ownership claim. Alan was now reviewing the documents with growing concern. Jessica, you told me you were the sole beneficiary of all Michael's assets. Because I am, she nearly shouted. Check his will. Thomas stepped forward. There is no will, Mrs. Parker. We have checked thoroughly with the probate court. Michael Parker died intestate. However, these assets, she pointed to the documents, passed outside of probate due to the survivorship provisions and business succession planning. Jessica turned to her attorney, panic rising in her voice. Alan, Do something. He shook his head slowly. If these documents are authentic, and they appear to be, you have no claim to either the property or the business. They cannot be authentic. Michael would have told me. I spoke for the first time since entering. Why would he tell you, Jessica? He knew what you were doing. The secret credit cards, the draining of accounts. He was protecting what he built. Her face contorted with rage. You turned him against me. Michael made his own decisions, I replied calmly. He saw your true character before I did. Jessica stood abruptly, pacing the room. This is a mistake. The Thorntons are paying $3.5 million for this property. The deal is nearly done. You cannot sell what you do not own, Daniel stated flatly. Any attempt to do so would constitute fraud. The first deputy cleared his throat. Mrs. Parker, you need to understand your current position. This property belongs to Griffin Parker. You have no legal right to be here without his permission. The reality of her situation finally seemed to dawn on Jessica. Her eyes darted around the room, calculating angles that no longer existed. What about the life insurance? She asked desperately. That is still mine. Yes, Thomas confirmed. The $2 million policy naming you beneficiary is valid. However, I feel obligated to inform you that those funds may be subject to claims if our audit reveals misappropriation of company funds. Jessica turned to Alan. He gave a slight shake of his head, confirming the legal reality she faced. What do you want? She finally asked me, her voice hollow. I want you to leave my home, I said simply. Today. And go where? She demanded. That is not my concern. You have $2 million in insurance proceeds. I suggest you use some of it for housing. Jessica laughed bitterly. After everything I put up with, Michael's long hours, his obsession with that stupid company, living in this backwater when we could have been in a penthouse in Seattle or San Francisco, her mask had finally dropped completely. Frank stepped forward, anger evident in his normally composed face. Michael worked those long hours to provide the lifestyle you demanded, he said. He built that company from nothing, employed dozens of people, supported their families, and you speak of it as a stupid obsession. Jessica dismissed him with a wave. Whatever. The marriage was a mistake from the beginning. I should have left years ago. Why did not you? I asked, genuinely curious. She looked at me, contempt clear in her expression. The prenup expired after 5 years. I was waiting for the right time. The callous admission hung in the air. She had never loved my son, had simply been waiting for the optimal financial moment to leave him. Daniel cleared his throat. Mrs. Parker, you have until 5 p.m. today to remove your personal belongings from the premises. Mr. Parker is generously allowing you this time as a courtesy. And if I refuse? She challenged. The second deputy answered. Then you will be removed and charged with trespassing. Jessica looked at each of us in turn, searching for any weakness or sympathy. Finding none, she turned to Alan. Pack up your papers. We are done here. As Alan gathered the real estate documents, Jessica disappeared upstairs. We heard drawers opening and closing, closet doors slamming. Daniel turned to me. We will stay until she leaves. Are you all right, Griffin? I nodded, moving to the mantel where family photos still stood. Michael's graduation from trade school, his first major project completion, our fishing trips. Jessica had left these photos up as props, I realized. Part of the show she had been putting on for the Thorntons. Jessica returned 30 minutes later, with 2 large suitcases. She had changed into an expensive outfit, jewelry glinting at her throat and wrists. I will send for the rest of my clothes and personal items, she announced. My attorney will coordinate. That is acceptable, Daniel agreed. We will inventory everything to ensure only your personal property leaves the premises. Jessica looked around the house one last time, her gaze cold and calculating rather than nostalgic. Then she turned to me. You think you have won, old man. But Michael is still dead, and no house or company brings him back. The cruelty of the statement was breathtaking, designed to cause maximum pain. I refused to give her the satisfaction of a response. As she headed for the door, I called after her. Jessica, one more thing. She paused, looking back with a raised eyebrow. Michael knew about everything. He was planning to divorce you. That is what all this, I gestured to the legal documents, was about. He was protecting his assets before filing. Her composure cracked slightly. You are lying. Frank spoke up. He told me himself, Jessica. Had the divorce papers drawn up. Was going to serve you the week after the accident. For a moment, genuine emotion flashed across Jessica's face, quickly replaced by her usual mask. Well, then I guess the scaffold collapse saved me a lot of legal fees. With that final, heartless comment, she walked out the door, Alan following behind with a disgusted expression. We watched through the window as they got into their respective cars, Daniel moving his vehicle to let them leave. As Jessica's sports car disappeared down the driveway, Frank put his hand on my shoulder. It is over, Griffin. We did it. For Michael. I nodded, emotion finally breaking through the calm I had maintained throughout the confrontation. Yes, for Michael. The house felt different after Jessica left. Larger, emptier, but somehow cleaner, as if a toxin had been purged. I stood in Michael's study that evening, running my fingers over his desk, the built-in bookshelves he had crafted himself, the leather chair, where he had spent countless hours reviewing contracts and drafting proposals. For the first time since his death, I allowed myself to fully feel his absence. Not just the grief, which had been my constant companion, but the space he had occupied in the world. My son, who had built so much with his hands and heart, was truly gone. The knowledge settled on me with crushing weight. I slept in the guest house that first night, unable to bring myself to use the main house yet. It was legally mine, but emotionally, it remained Michael's home. Over the following days, I began the process of sorting through his belongings, a task Jessica had begun with mercenary efficiency, but that I approached with reverence. Each item told a story. His collection of vintage carpentry tools, some rescued from estate sales where Jessica had thought them worthless. Photographs from job sites, Michael standing proud with his crews. The silly trophy our family had given him for fixing everyone's home projects at every gathering. Frank came by frequently, helping with the heavier items and sharing stories I had never heard. How Michael had quietly paid for a crew member's child's medical treatment. The time he worked through the night to finish a disabled veteran's accessibility ramp for free. Small kindnesses that defined his character. Michael's office yielded the most poignant discoveries. In his desk drawer, I found a journal detailing his growing awareness of Jessica's true nature. The entries started with minor concerns, progressed to documented evidence of financial misconduct, and ended with his plans for divorce. The final entry, dated just 3 days before his death, read, "Met with Thomas today to finalize everything. Dad is protected no matter what happens. Will serve papers next week after the Johnson project inspection. Feel like I can finally breathe again. Dinner with Dad tomorrow night. Fishing this weekend." That dinner had been our last meal together. We had talked about nothing important, just everyday matters. Though I had noticed a lightness in him I had not seen in months. He had known he was about to reclaim his life, though neither of us could have imagined how short that life would be. As weeks passed, I slowly transitioned from the guest house to the main house. It felt right, somehow, to occupy the spaces Michael had created to keep his vision alive. I converted one room into a memorial of sorts, displaying his awards, photographs, and the mementos of his life that Jessica had been so eager to discard. Through Daniel and Thomas, I reached out to the Thorntons, apologizing for the situation they had been drawn into. To my surprise, James Thornton called me personally. "Mr. Parker, no apology necessary. We were uncomfortable with Jessica from the start. Something felt off about the sale, but the property is magnificent, and we knew your son's work. Would you still be interested in purchasing?" I asked, not yet sure of my own plans. "Actually, yes, but not to live in," he replied. "We were planning to donate it for use as a training facility for construction apprentices. Our foundation supports trade education." The synchronicity was startling. Michael had often spoken about the need for better training programs in the trades. We agreed to meet the following week to discuss possibilities. Meanwhile, Frank and I took control of Parker Construction. The audit revealed Jessica had indeed been siphoning funds, though not enough to threaten the company's stability. Michael's financial prudence had protected the business even from her worst excesses. At my first meeting with the employees, many of whom had attended Michael's funeral, I made my intentions clear. I am not here to replace Michael, I told the assembled staff. No one could. But I am here to ensure his legacy continues. Parker Construction will remain family-owned, committed to the values Michael established. Quality work, fair treatment of employees and clients, and community investment. The relief in the room was palpable. Many had feared Jessica would sell the company to the highest bidder, regardless of what might happen to the teams Michael had built. With Frank handling day-to-day operations and me providing oversight and mentorship to younger staff, the company not only survived but thrived. We completed the projects Michael had begun and secured new contracts based on the reputation he had established. 3 months after Jessica's departure, the insurance company initiated an investigation into Michael's accident based on inconsistencies in the initial reports. The scaffold that collapsed had been recently inspected and certified safe. The failure was suspicious. Though nothing was ever proven, the timing raised uncomfortable questions. Jessica had been at the office that morning, supposedly dropping off lunch for Michael. She had left just 30 minutes before the collapse. The insurance investigation ultimately proved inconclusive, but I noticed she quickly relocated to Florida after investigators attempted to question her. 6 months after Michael's death, I finalized an agreement with the Thornton Foundation. Rather than selling the property, I donated it for the creation of the Michael Parker Trade Education Center, with a lifetime residency right for myself in the guest house. The main house was converted into classrooms, workshops, and administrative offices. On the 1-year anniversary of Michael's death, we held the grand opening. Over 200 people attended, including Michael's entire company, former clients, and many young people eager to learn the trades he had valued. I cut the ribbon with Michael's favorite work gloves still in my pocket. The center became my purpose. Each day, watching young apprentices learn the skills Michael had mastered gave meaning to my remaining years. I often sat in on classes, sharing old-school techniques that complemented modern methods. Some evenings, I invited promising students to the guest house for dinner, telling them stories about Michael and the business he had built. Jessica never returned to Portland, as far as I knew. Frank mentioned hearing she had remarried, an elderly real estate developer in Palm Beach. Her pattern continued, apparently. I found I no longer cared about her fate. She had become a footnote in our family story, not its defining chapter. As for me, the grief never fully disappeared, but it changed form. The sharp, breath-stealing pain of early loss gradually transformed into a gentler sadness, interwoven with pride in what Michael had created and what continued in his name. On quiet evenings, I still talked to him sometimes, sitting on the deck where we shared so many conversations. I tell him about the business, the students at the center, the lives being changed through his legacy. In those moments, I feel him closest, as if the barrier between us thins just enough to sense his approval. The greatest lesson I learned through this ordeal was not about legal precautions or financial planning, though those proved crucial. It was about seeing people clearly, without the distortion of wishful thinking. Michael had eventually seen Jessica for who she truly was, and had taken steps to protect what mattered. I try to honor that clarity of vision in my remaining years. If there is one message I would share from this experience, it is this: pay attention to actions, not words. Jessica spoke of love while planning betrayal. Michael demonstrated love through protection and provision. The truth reveals itself through choices, not declarations. I often wonder what Michael would think of how things turned out. The company stronger than ever. His home transformed into a place of learning and opportunity. His father finding purpose in preserving his legacy. I believe he would approve. So what do you think? Have you ever had to protect yourself or your family from someone who showed their true colors only after tragedy struck? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And if you know someone who might be facing similar challenges with family or inheritance issues, share this video with them. Maybe my experience can help them find their own path through difficult times. Thank you for listening to this chapter of my life. And remember, sometimes the greatest tribute we can pay to those we have lost is to ensure their values and vision continue to touch lives.